you want to learn more what happened in the show, come and watch it.
I'll start praying while you're eating it.
So God, it smells. For the people who aren't listening on aren't watching on YouTube, and you should be, this looks like a little dead fish wiggling around here. Rob's face looks like he's, I don't know. You look like you're dreading this more than me.
I think so, bro. I think I'm feeling it at the moment. For the record,
do I do it?
For those who can't see the video, he's not doing a pansy little bite. That's a full-on mouthful. That's like 2 fingers wide and a finger long.
Well, let me. It's girthy, right? Let's get it done.
To your health, primal gains. Come on.
All the fucking B vitamins. Get at me. 3, 2, 1. So, Rob, I'd like to consider myself a man of my word. And for anyone who's watching this will have probably heard the trailer and will remember a time where we did an episode in defense of the Liver King after he came out with, 15 grand US worth of steroids a month. Quick point. Do you think he's actually off them?
I haven't seen anything from him. He's disappeared from the viral scene so quickly. So I wonder. Maybe
I've seen one picture where he looks smaller, but still very big and shredded.
Really?
Yeah, he looks like if Tom Hanks of Castaway did a proper gear cycle.
I saw, we're going back now. I saw one video where he was doing an ice dip in a pond, which didn't look particularly icy at the time, but I'm sure it was cold. And like the hashtag or the caption he put up on the screen was like "Natty Life" or something. You can't call yourself natty yet. You've got a long way to go before you're natural.
I'm not. We spoke about this before. Right? I'm not an anti-gear user whatsoever, but like, I don't think you can ever claim it when you've been on it. I've seen people before go, "Oh, I can't wait to get to 90 kilos natural." I'm like, yeah, you're not. You just haven't used it for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I think the liver. Also, it doesn't sit right with me. The Liver King putting it as a hashtag and like talking about his natural status, because it seems like, okay, now we're just using this as your lies and your shame to almost kind of gain sympathy and be your next plug.
Yeah, exactly. But like how long before he starts calling himself the Natty King instead? It's probably around the corner. It's probably already in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Maybe he's already done it and that's why I can't see him.
Literally, he's turned into John Cena. You cannot see him. He is just too small. So going back to the point at hand, I'm just putting it off now, aren't I? Like, we did a bet on that show based around the World Cup that was coming up, and we bet. I saw a post that was a fortune teller predicted the final, and I wanted to believe him. I want to believe someone knew the future. A time traveler existed. I got excited, and I bet on France. Was it France I bet on? Whoever I bet on didn't do very well.
Did I bet on France and you bet on Brazil?
Yeah, that was it, wasn't it?
That was it. Yeah.
Whoever it was, I lost. And the bet was the person would have to eat raw liver on the air. And then when this topic came up, I thought this had to be the time to do it. Oh, for the record, I quite like liver, but looking at this thing raw, and I'm just prodding at my fork and how much it bounces back scares me.
That's not right.
This will be the clip for the show. Should this be the whole trailer? Like, no over clips of anything else, just this. And if you want to learn more what happened in the show, come and watch it.
I'll start praying while you're eating it.
So it smells. For the people who aren't listening on aren't watching on YouTube, and you should be, this looks like a little dead fish wiggling around here. Rob's face looks like he's, I don't know. You look like you're dreading this more than me.
I think so, bro. I think I'm feeling it at the moment. For the record,
do I do it?
For those who can't see the video, he's not doing a pansy little bite. That's a full-on mouthful. That's like 2 fingers wide and a finger long.
Well, let me. It's girthy. Let me tell you. Let me tell you a story to delay more, based on why I don't do pansy bites of anything. Right. When I was when I played rugby, I had a New Year's party, and my dad said they told us to bring drinking game forfeits. So I decided to bring a Scotch bonnet chili.
Oh yeah.
And I'd had a few drinks, and my rugby coach, no one would have it, no one would dare. My rugby coach took a tiny slither, and I had a few drinks. And I just went, "Yeah, big girl's blouse," picked it up, bite it clean through. And I was like, this is nothing. Face turned, ran upstairs, like, water. Better. Worse. Came down in front of all my mates crying, going, "Mom, can you get me some milk, please?" So I don't do pansy. I would get rinsed on YouTube if I had a little tiny bit. Yeah. Right? This is Liver King probably doesn't use a fork, but he has a size bit this big, so I've got to have a size this big. And when I'm jacked next week, like super jacked, like 15 grams worth of gear jacked, you'll be sorry. I don't want to do this. Right. Let's get it done.
To your health, lad. To your health. Primal gains.
All the fucking B vitamins. Get at me. 3,
I bet
2,
you can like it.
1.
I reckon that while he's chewing, I reckon the consistency and the temperature is going to throw him. But I reckon he's going to like it. Because he already eats occasionally cooked liver, I believe. So I don't think the flavour should change much. He's still alive. He's kind of smiling.
We have... The interesting thing about this, you said when he stops chewing.
Oh, no.
This might be the first hour of the show.
Oh, that's wrong.
Right.
That's not right.
It's cold out the fridge. The taste is, it's fine, but it's so chewy. Right. The texture is rank.
Fuck Liver King. Fuck Liver King.
It's a marketing gimmick. There's no way he fucking eats this every day.
There's no fucking way. No way.
Stick it on a pan for 2 minutes. I'm going to move away from my mic so people don't hear me chewing.
Fry that bad boy up with some bacon and some onions. You're probably laughing. And great, you get a ton of nutrition in there, but don't forget you can't just live off of fucking organ meat. I thought it was quite interesting. There's a bit of back and forth going forward at the moment with Michaela Peterson and some UK personal trainers.
Ooh.
Based on the carnivore diet that she had posted her blood results recently or something like that. And so I don't know his name. He dresses up as a doctor. I hope he's a real doctor. I don't know. Dresses up as a doctor, and he was debunking a video and whatever. And she commented, there's a bit of a back and forth going there. But now James Smith has jumped on it as well, because why wouldn't he? Mm-hmm. And he has said on Twitter, whether he does it or not, that he's going to do a month carnivore and just see the blood work afterwards, which is an odd thing to do, considering when you're the type of guy that, promotes, you do the diet you can stick to and you don't have to cut out stuff and things like that, that he's taking this challenge on himself. I don't know. But fair play to him. But what I thought was interesting that she posted this blood work on the carnivore diet with no organ meat. Apparently no organ meat at all. I thought that was interesting. That she's just going from red steaks. I assume chicken.
I think when you look at this is the thing. There's a few things I think about that story. Like the first, when you look at this, I hate the fact that people are coming out and debunking her. Like I've listened to Michaela Peterson talk about the carnivore diet. It's always autobiographical in the sense of she's talking about her story and her autoimmune conditions and how this has helped her. Like, how can anyone debunk someone's positive reaction to something? Yeah. And that's like, if they went, this is the best diet, you shouldn't have any diet. If she Tim Spectored it, right? Yes. Then I get it. I get the debunking. But she never said this is the only diet. They said, I have an autoimmune condition. I decided to take out my vegetables, and all of a sudden, all my symptoms eased off. And it's been years. I'm like, well, that's a great story. Regardless if it's the best diet or there was maybe another way of doing it. Like, who are you to say, no, you shouldn't do that? What are you saying? No, you should have kept your condition because, that's wrong in my eyes. I think that. I also think the thing with the carnivore diet, when we look at sort of like, is massively nutritious. That's the first thing. But this is why the difference between evidence-based and evidence-informed is such an important thing, because evidence-based got to go, it doesn't work because I have research on fiber or I have research on X, Y, and Z. But you don't say, why is it that the carnivore diet actually helps? people with gut dysfunction. And it's because you remove a lot of common inflammatories and a lot of like plant chemicals and things that do affect a lot of people's guts. And things like Candida, H. pylori, parasite overgrowth, they love sugar. They love carbohydrate. They love glucose to fuel. So you just stop feeding them. And the argument is, if she went and had a bit of pasta tomorrow, if she hasn't repaired the gut lining enough in that time when she's taken it out, then all her symptoms are going to come back. Yeah. And that may be true. But I think there's a place for a carnivore diet. Do 30 days of a carnivore diet or a couple of months of a carnivore diet if you have some symptoms. Ease their gut health, ease the symptoms, and then just go, right, maybe I'll throw in some glutamine. Maybe I'll throw in some digestive enzymes. Maybe I'll let it heal. Then I'll throw in a probiotic to repopulate. This is the stuff that eventually then you go, okay, now I'm in a position where I can reintroduce carbohydrates. It's a tool in the toolbox. But I think fitness coaches they forget about the individual. They forget about the tool. They forget about if this helps someone, it's good. Everyone says the best diet is the one you can stick to, unless they don't agree with the diet.
Mate, look how angry the industry gets at keto, and it gets at keto originally came from Atkins, right? Let's face it was just a rebrand, right? And even in the original Atkins diet book, there's a chapter on how you add carbs back in. Everyone forgot that. Atkins was only ever meant to be a short-term elimination style diet. Everyone forgets that. You go, the Atkins diet, that means you're low carb for the rest of your life. Keto means you're keto for the rest of your life. Essentially, whether you really reach ketosis or not, in the low carb boot camp we've discussed before, that essentially is a ketogenic diet. Arguable whether you actually reach ketosis in
too much protein
or not. But at the same time, of course, too much protein. So for the record, for those who didn't get that, this high fat in moderate protein is the true keto diet. So you wouldn't just massively increase your protein and have that as the biggest macronutrient. You would actually flip things around. But we use it for a short-term tool for multiple reasons. We're not really actively trying to reach ketosis during in that. But we do. I watched her video. I didn't watch the response too much because the geezer that posted it I can't stand. But he's almost backlashing against the fact, well, not everyone should be on this diet. And I don't think I've ever heard a clip of Michaela Peterson saying everyone should be on it.
Me neither.
Same with Jordan Peterson. If Jordan Peterson was actively promoting that everyone should be on the carnivore diet only, I'm pretty sure most of his podcasts with Rogan would be a lot of arguing forward and backward over that more than anything else. And they don't. They barely even touch on it. They barely mention it. They talk about the benefits he's received from it. And same when she's been on it. I believe she was on it as well.
She was on it. She did it first.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
She had she had real issues. Like she had much worse issues than Jordan. He had bad issues as well. But exactly. It's when on our mentorship, I teach a continuum of diets approaches just to get people where do these tools fit in, and I go from carnivore to high carbohydrate, carnivore, and then I'll go ketogenic diet, and then I'll probably go like a vertical diet, which is like Stan Efferding's diet, which I think is probably my favorite starting diet for people. If people had said, just tell me what to eat, I'll eat anything and don't need any cookies. Sure. And then you would just sort of go just a traditional low carb, then a cyclical low carb, like 5 days low, 1 day high. Yeah. Maybe then go like high day, low days, carb cycling, high carb. And the spectrum depends on what's the performance requirements for the client, what digestive issues the client has, and you can just go up or down what stimulus in the training, and you can slide up and down this continuum. But none of them are bad. And people who say, well, you can't get your nutrition from it, the only argument is fiber. And I think, and you can take a psyllium husk and fruit. And I think it's only going to gain in popularity because I have now seen more well-respected people talking about some vegetables cause people digestive issues, and these are more respected people that aren't pro-carnivore. We're going to get my prediction for the future is we're going to go into which goes to the opposite topic of this podcast, or maybe leans into it. We're going to get an anti-vegetable craze coming soon, not from the media, but from the groundswell upwards. And this is maybe what we're talking about, because is that driven by more research coming out of the carnivore diet, that popularity, or is it going to be coming of people biting back the pro-vegan agenda, which is the topic of this podcast. That was actually accidental. Which is talking about is veganism an agenda. So go on.
I would, just on a quick side note, but I love the idea. I romanticize the idea of getting my own little place in the woods, cabin in the woods, near a lake, dogs running around, chopping my own logs down, whatever. Proper, not primal, but proper off-grid living, right? Where you would use some of the land to grow your own food, and you would buy from all the local places around you. So the issue I've got at the moment with going carnivore is my options are Lidl, Aldi, Tesco. It doesn't fill me with confidence that I'm getting the most nutritious, clean meat.
Try here.
You're
Try
probably
here.
even fucking worse, right?
Way worse. But you've got muscle foods.
There's options. Of course, there's options. There's always options. If I get a car again, 20-minute drive to a proper farm, probably sort myself out there as well. But obviously, for everyone living deep in the city who may not have the money for, muscle food, you can budget it. Of course, you can budget it. I'm sure it technically works out cheaper for the quality you're getting. We're not sponsored by Muscle Food yet, but
if they want to sponsor us, feel free.
If they want to sponsor, if they want to send us some free Pampers, come on, lads, we'll help you out with that. We'll promote that for you. I forgot my point I was making, so I'm just going to move on.
Sponsored by Oxford Steaks. No, but I've always been tempted by it. I think it's not a strict carnivore, but like a simple approach, and I think I'd probably feel better on it, to be honest with you. Like, if I got into it, I think it'd probably be an easier way to keep relatively lean. And I also like is it a great muscle building diet? No, but is that as much of a priority for me as it used to be? No. I want to move well, I want less inflammation, I want longevity, and I want to feel okay taking my shirt off as a personal trainer. That's it these days.
I love the idea of the Gironda diet, steak and eggs. I would totally do that. I don't think it's sustainable, but I would totally live off of that. I could happily live off of that. But how long before I miss carbonara? How long before I miss a decent fucking pizza or a charcuterie board? It will come at some point.
But I think that's where it is, right? Like we sort of live in these sort of extremes where people go have this strict. People go on carnivore, and if they mess it up, they've ruined their diet. And the thing is with this, if anyone's listening to this and thinking, okay, that's not carnivore though, if you go and have a pizza once a week, no one said you had to be perfect. Like if you wanted a pizza once a week, right, and you went carnivore, it's very different. You could get into a surplus eating carnivore, of course, you're having the fattier cuts of meat and things like this, and fish, but like it's going to be very difficult. So you are probably saving yourself a fair ton of calories to go and have a Saturday night. And for some people, that is a more sustainable approach to dieting than the 5 to 10% deficit, 7-day straight split, and just it. People, the more I bring my clients into the practice of building their diet, the better adherence is. And I think that's what's lost on people having these cat fights.
Yes.
But moving on to veganism. And I want to caveat this a little bit, because this is a genuine. We've caveated a few of our shows where we've gone a little bit tinfoil hatty, but I generally want to caveat this because I think it's important that, like, I appreciate that there are various reasons why people go vegan, vegetarian, and I always ask when I have a client that is a plant-based eater, like, what is it that made you go plant-based? Because if you say, I want to look after animals, it just doesn't sit right with me, or religious reasons, awesome. It's not my place to change your mind, nor do I want to. That is absolutely admirable. But I also see people now, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this episode, I see more and more people now that are wanting to do veganism because they get the opinion that it's healthier. And like one of the recent Dario CEO episodes kind of encouraged that. Thankfully, we got a pro red meat guy not for long afterwards. But we're going to get more of these pro-veganism things. I see more and more people promoting it with the agenda of selling supplements. I see more and more people promoting it with all sorts of other agendas. And I'm now just like, I want people, if they're going to make the choice about veganism, do it for the right reasons. Jake Dollarshall, do you follow him on Instagram? I might be absolutely butchering his surname, but he's looked over hundreds and hundreds of blood work. He's one guy who's really good with his blood work stuff, and he said there's 3 things that he says are common in people with the worst blood work. So the first one was obesity. Not fat shaming anyone, but like this is just blood work data. Like he doesn't even know the people. He's just like, hey, obesity tends to lead to worse blood work on average. Medications. Now, he says he can't say for certain whether it's the medication that's made the worst blood work or the stuff that the medications were for causing the blood work. But people who have a laundry list of medications tend to have worse blood work. And then vegans, the worst blood work. So you're now what I worry about, the reason why I think shows like this are important is that we have people thinking they're going to do it for health and are becoming less healthy. You can do a vegan diet healthy. You can. But you just need to be more careful and you need to plug holes. And most people aren't led to believe that.
No, that's the problem. They will instantly, someone with a long history of poor dieting, poor food choices decides from whether it's a Netflix documentary or a podcast or Channel 4 saying that vegan diet is the healthiest diet in the world with no real basis, no real backup to that claim. The issue they're going to have is they don't know how to structure a diet anyway. So what's the first thing they're going to do? Well, okay, vegan diet. Am I going to live off a ton of vegetables? Probably not. So what they're going to do, they're going to go to the plant-based freezer aisle where they're going to eat a ton of processed fucking foods. They're going to live off of vegan junk food, which does fucking exist because sugar's not exclusive to meat eater diet. There are some horrific vegan options out there for
pasta and cheese, right? Pasta and vegan cheese. That's
what your diet's going to become, right? So no wonder you're going to be nutritionally sparse, lacking with the food choices that you're going to have. But it doesn't mean that you should instantly write it off. Of course not. If you want to go on that, if you want to make an active choice to become vegan for ethical reasons, then fair fucking play to you. But you've got to do the research, you've got to do the work, you've got to create a massive awareness of what is going in your body. Otherwise, you're going to suffer at the expense of trying to save something else, which is, as noble as it sounds, it's kind of stupid at the same time. So you've got to look a little bit deeper. It means staying away from the processed fucking stuff like anyone else should do as well. But the problem is the options you've got now with the big vegan push from companies is it's all processed. It's all processed stuff now. So you have to look a little bit deeper. You have to seek out potential coaching as well from someone who knows what they're talking about. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy to get you set up on a vegan diet. Simon might be. I don't know.
I've worked with a few, and I think essentially, in essence, when you're looking at, I think it's a good way to start. Is like how someone's embarking on this for whatever reason, right? Understanding the pros and cons, and how to do it if you've got your head set on it. And I think essentially the rules of dieting do not change. Vegan dieting does not make it a miracle cure for fat loss. No. Calories are still king. Protein is going to make it easier to stick to the diet. It's going to hold on to tissue, right? That often one of the big risks of vegan and vegetarian diets is most people drop their protein intake, which means they find it harder to maintain muscle mass, which means they risk osteoporosis later in life. Vegans often have a lot of issues with osteoporosis as you start getting older. So I would go on the acceptable ranges of protein. I would probably go on the lower end of them and have more carbs and fats in the diet to bulk up the rest of the diet, right? I wouldn't go on the high end of the range. I'd probably go on the lower end of the range because there's more, most protein sources that vegan and vegetarian are going to have more carbs in them, so it's going to hard to balance it. And it's just like, it's going to be, it's finding the diet that works for somebody. If you're going to embark on a healthy vegan diet and you're doing it for health reasons, or you don't like meat, the one thing you have to be very, very aware of is the fact that you've already restricted your food choices massively. So if you want to be healthy, you don't really have much of a leg to stand on wanting crazy amounts of variety, because now it becomes very, very difficult. Yeah. So, you've got to have to, if you don't like protein powder, good luck. It's if you don't like tofu, good luck. Yeah. These things are going to be massively important. And then you've also got to understand there's going to be some massive nutrient deficiencies. If you're performance-based, creatine monohydrate, which comes from red meat, you would need to supplement it, as well as zinc, which is going to be important for the immune system. It's going to be massive. B vitamins, which are important for mitochondrial health and energy and all this sort of stuff. These are just a few. Iron, more chance for being anemic. These are just a few of a laundry list of things you're potentially going to be deficient in.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds like, oh my God, why would I ever do it? It's just too complicated. And I would just make this simple. Most of my plant-based dieters, I would go, right, you can get all your essential amino acids, but like rice and peas, and everyone does all this sort of stuff. But you've got people that have tracking macros the first time, and you're adding an extra math game of essential amino acid bingo. It's just too complicated. So if you're in this position now, make life easier for you. Go 2 shakes, 2 meals. And then I would also find a good vegan friendly, but they're not all vegan friendly, a good essential amino acid. And I would drink that with every single meal.
Yeah, I like that.
And it just adds that leucine that's important for protein synthesis in with every meal without you having to think about what vegan foods have leucine. And that's most of it. Like it doesn't have to be more complicated than that, but you can't. I'm not going to say you can't, because someone will come out and say that's not true. It's very difficult to do a healthy vegan diet without supplementation.
Yes, I saw. Maybe you might be able to help me either way with this. I saw someone I know post the other day that she's not gone fully vegan, but she's gone veggie for a lot of the week. And one of the things she put in her post was how, I forget the name, what we call them, but obviously in terms of the amino acids, if you're a meat eater, you're going to get a full spectrum of amino acids very, very easily. Whereas certain plant-based foods, you're not going to get that full spectrum of amino acids. So you would combine different types of food to get your full spectrum by the end of the day. I forget what we call that, but she was saying that's been debunked and is not true anymore. And I thought to myself, I don't remember reading anything about that not being the case. And she didn't post anything.
But not being true from what perspective? Yeah, not being true from what perspective? Is this not being true from a stance of you don't need all the amino acids for health, or you're looking for muscle mass and performance? Because her validity is based off that answer.
True, very true. And I think it's literally just a case of the idea that you need to combine different plant-based proteins is false. I think it was as simple as that, which is why I was like,
I think, yes, from a health perspective, you're probably right. Like, it probably doesn't matter. But the thing you're missing is leucine, which is quite important. So this is why I don't combine stuff to do it. That's why I use protein powders and amino acids for people, because it's easier. But you will need leucine, and you will not get that from most vegan foods.
That's definitely what you're lacking in. And again, you can't. Therefore, supplementation becomes important. And that doesn't mean there's anything bad from drinking EAAs, decent EAAs, every single meal. That's not going to lead to anything detrimental over time. But you do have to realise that that's potentially a life of maybe even expensive supplementation if the price of subs keep going up.
It's not hugely detrimental, but Luke Lehman did a lot of research on people drinking, because the phase where all trainers were drinking essential amino acids. That's all they were drinking all the time, right? And he saw signs of like people having lower mood, because it's something to do with neurotransmitters. Luke, if you're listening to this, then please drop me a message and let me know what that was, because I don't remember. But it could be. But again, it's risk reward, right? It's just a risk reward. If you're going to choose to go on a diet that's going to be, what's the biggest issue? If you making it harder to get to your performance goals, maybe being nutrient deficient, or like just being a little bit one day. I don't know. I don't know the extent of it. But I certainly don't think it's necessarily the healthier diet. All things equal.
When it comes to the supplementation side of things, if you go on organic, vegan food sites, things like that, it all then becomes a little bit hippie, dare I say. That if you were to go on the supplement section, you're not going to see essential amino acids promoted as the first thing that should be taken. You're going to see maca root powder and this rainbow mushroom and excessive vitamin C or whatever the hell, they're all in powdered form. So they know you've got to supplement this fucking stuff. But it's not the stuff you need to be supplemented for optimal fucking health.
Yeah. The thing is, right, because you're going to get people saying this is like, well, you're just 2 meat eaters, right? Simon ate liver on the air 5 minutes ago. But like, I also think when you look at things like the game changers, for example, right? There is a massive agenda in terms of people wanting to profit from supplement companies.
Yes.
But the things you will hear, and this is like you will not unhear. Like you know, when these things you just can't unsee or you can't unhear. This is the thing you can't unhear. So whenever they talk about the health claims, they're nearly always comparing vegan diets to the sort of like the standard Western diet. So if you're comparing someone eating a lot more vegetables but not a great diet to someone eats 3 Big Macs a day, of course it's healthier. But if you took 2 healthy diets, one healthy meat eater, one healthy vegetarian vegan diet, it would be easier for the meat eater to probably be healthier because he's getting a more better spectrum of nutrients. The other thing you often hear is when people say red meat is bad for you, they often talk, despite being one of the most nutrient dense things on the planet, is they'll make a stupid claim like it's worse than 20 cigarettes or something, having a piece of bacon. And they go like, it's as bad as red, and they always lump in together red and processed meat. So they go, there's a correlation, which is not causation, between like heart disease and red and processed meat. I'm like, you can't compare a grass-fed steak to corned beef, and they never separate between really processed meats and good quality grass-fed meat.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because again, it goes back to what we were talking about on the Stephen Bartlett episode. It's easy sound bites, you know. It's easy sound bites. One of the things in terms of how much you're gonna miss out. And okay, so we predominantly work with clients in the body composition realm, and we are very aware of our own body composition. We try and maintain what we can, so we know that we need to focus on losing content, protein content, things like that. And it's very, very easier to do it with meat, right? We know it is. Because, and this is a bit of homework for anyone who's watching, whereas if you hear people say, well, you can still hit the same spectrum of amino acids and the same amount of protein through plant-based foods, one of the issues, common complaints I'll get with clients early on is when I give them their protein amount and they're a meat eater and they go, I can't eat that amount of protein. I can't imagine hitting that. What I want you to do is Google, this is your homework, Google how much protein you get in how much steak you'd have to eat to get 25 grams of protein. And then I want you to Google, because this is a common food that vegans push, how much quinoa you'd have to eat to get the same 25 grams of protein. Your jaw will drop. That's your homework.
Broccoli. Broccoli is another one they always compare, right?
Broccoli,
and I'm like, do you want to go to the toilet any time in the next week? Because like the amount of fiber you'd have to get through to get an equivalent level of broccoli is monstrous.
Yeah.
And it's just not practical or comfortable. No. So like, but going on to like, we see this all the time now. We saw the Game Changers talk about it. We saw Tim Spector talk about it. We've seen Stephen Bartlett's episode talk about it. We've seen podcasts all over, like, talk about this as the ultimate longevity hack. And I'm generally the same belief. Is like, again, I'm going to shout out Luke Lehman again. He's saying that the healthiest diet is taking a really healthy, like, vegan diet and sticking a steak on top of it. And I generally believe that. But why do you think there is such a push in the media, podcast world, film industry for plant-based diets?
I think that there is definitely a bit of a cultural shift where people recognize the low quality of meat available in big cities and the price of it as well, and the ethical push against, mass scale factory farming and things like that, which is terrible. Of course, it's fucking terrible. I don't think anyone thinks that's actually a good thing, apart from the people directly involved in mass factory farming. I'm not saying meat farming, I'm saying factory farming. So there are some horrific practices out there, which people don't want to be part of the chain that keeps that going, right? By paying for it. So that's fine. That's fully understandable. And I try and make the best choices I can when I do buy, but you never really know, right? So there is a bit of a cultural shift in that respect. But the problem is the companies that are pushing this, I'll just use the word agenda, because from my side, I believe there is. The agenda that's being pushed is from companies that profit already from food production. So it's not new companies that have sprung out of nowhere that are ethical and non-profit or anything like that. It's the same fucking companies that are already supplying you with your factory farmed meat and your processed cheese and all the other crap that probably hasn't got any nutrition in it whatsoever. And if you think for a company to be profitable, they need to charge you the highest possible price with the lowest possible cost of production.
Like bird's eye fake fish, right? Like it's still bird's eye.
Fake bird's eye. Fake bird, fake bird's eye, fake fish. Yeah, it has to. They have to produce it on the cheap. And if you look into, which I wouldn't recommend if you're particularly squeamish either, if you look into the production of some of these vegan foods, there's no way that if they were to produce it in its most natural form, it would still be kind of expensive because it is an expensive process. So suddenly, you could say we've got large-scale factory vegan farming because if the processors have to put some of these things in to make it palatable and edible for you to fucking chuck down your throat. So,
and how many vegan foods? And how many vegan foods are actually? How many vegan foods are actually vegan as well? Avocados, honey.
True.
You know, like there's so many things that aren't the case, but they'll be pushed out by companies because the goal isn't to actually be ethical for the planet. No. The goal is to sell you something.
Goal's profit,
like,
and it always has been. Why would that?
Is it better for the planet?
So there's lots and lots of arguments back and forward, but from what I see, no, it's not well. It could be. But it's not as simple as we flip the switch and we stop farming any sort of meat and we all eat vegan. If we did that from tomorrow, let's say there was a giant red button, we can go, right, planet goes vegan now, we're going to save the world. We push it. Over a couple of years, billions would die. Billions would fucking die. Which you could then argue is probably better for the planet anyway. There's a few morons I wouldn't mind seeing in that list. But it's not as simple as that. There's so much nuance to it, right? Which we're going to talk about a ton of stuff anyway. It's not as simple as you just make that switch and the world's going to fix itself. There's, again, profit to be made by global corporations that don't really care about your health. They care about the profit and their shareholders. So if we went vegan, they're the people that really, really win because they're the people that are winning now. Don't think that hitting that vegan button, suddenly we're supporting local farmers who are growing crops and cows and sheep dance merrily through the forest together, and there's blue butterflies everywhere, and it's not going to fucking work. That time is gone. We ain't getting that back. So it's not as simple as, yes, let's switch and we save the fucking planet. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Some of this misinformation is pushed by those who stand to make the greatest profit from it. And there's a lot of misinformation from the meat side as well. People that don't really quite understand it. Again, what you said earlier in this podcast, we go to extremes. If someone says to me, right, we can take your meat away, well, I'm going to be pretty pissed. But I'm going to, let's say there was literally no other choice, then I'm going to look into what I can do to make sure my health and my quality of life is the best that it possibly can be. But some people, it's the same with guns. We can take your guns away. Well, you got a fight on your hands now, buddy. It's the same with meat. You say you can take your meat away. I don't see too much of a push to completely eliminate meat-based products yet. But I also think that it's coming. I also think there's a big push, a big agenda, and the promotion of things like bug proteins and suddenly McDonald's is now offering massive vegan options and things like that. And now we've got Beyond Burgers, and there's another one that's come out recently. I can't remember their name. These lab-based meat options. Who the fuck wants to eat something that was created in a lab?
I always think that's really weird.
I'm going off on my point. But...
yeah, no, I always think that's really weird. It's like what's the fake meat that bleeds? And I'm like, surely if your goal is to you've gone plant-based because you worry about animal cruelty, I don't want to be reminded of food that bleeds, whether it's vegan, plant-based or not.
It doesn't add up.
But like, we're gonna circle back to the fake meat stuff in terms of what the bigger agenda is, because that goes into a broader scale. But I want to come back to this sort of like better for the environment thing. And obviously the thing people talk about is the methane gas, right? And there's a stat that I've got here is that the UN's most significant report, Livestock Long Shadow, claims livestock are responsible for 18% of the greenhouse gas emissions. But the figure calculated emissions along the entire supply chain from the land use to the processing and the refrigeration in supermarkets. So 18% is the absolute maximum that it potentially is, but the actual livestock is probably less than 10%. And
right?
the thing that always gets me with this is like I'm not a climate change denier. I'm not in the slightest, right?
Sure.
COVID change denier. I'm not a climate change denier, not in the slightest. But the thing that I struggle to get my head around is there's this big push for like the politicians and media that okay, we've got to eat less red meat. You've got to get your bag for life. You've got to have your energy saving light bulb, and yet they are lighting Las Vegas and dropping nuclear weapons in the oceans. And I'm like, are you that like dropping nuclear weapons in the ocean is doing way worse for the ozone layer than me eating that piece of liver at the start of this show. I think it's a very real thing, but why are the actions not lining up with the words? Someone can maybe tell me that. I am totally ignorant to this.
Yeah.
But like, what do you think there's more to the push for plant-based meats and veganism?
I think there is. I honestly
Put
think
your
there is.
tinfoil hat on.
I'll put my tinfoil hat on. I honestly think there is. It's in the Great Reset book that we should bet that 75%. I'm going to butcher this quote, which kind of maybe ruins my point. But he either says 75% of your diet should be vegan or plant-based, which doesn't mean that you're actually going to get quality meat in the other 25%, or 75% of the world needs to switch to a vegan diet now. And you can guarantee that other 25% of the world is not going to include your fucking global leaders or people that are involved in the World Economic Forum or Klaus Schwab. He's not suddenly going to go vegan, is he?
So for people who aren't familiar, talk to us through the Great Reset book.
So the Great Reset book is written by Klaus Schwab, head of the World Economic Forum. Those global leaders that meet every year that don't necessarily have your best interest at heart, but they network and they shake hands and they seem to increase their own power and their profit without really helping us out. And they make some very, very extreme claims of how the world should be without really thinking of the bigger picture, that every culture is different and every person is different, and control is not necessarily the best way to get people to comply with. I don't know. Maybe COVID proved that was actually correct. I don't think control is the best way to get people to comply with what you think is best for them. When everyone should, I believe, have sovereignty over their own decisions within reason. Doesn't mean we all go start killing each other or anything like that. But I believe there is a big push because they can probably make more profit from these vegan farming practices. They can condense the production cost. So rather than having to support X amount of farmers, cattle farmers across the planet, across the USA, across the UK as well, it's probably cheaper to just open a handful of soybean farms or whatever. And artificial fertilizers are probably dirt cheap and easier to manufacture than any manure-based process or alternative farming process, whatever people are actually using now. And obviously, the cheaper and cheaper you go, the less safe it is. We've seen this with Monsanto, glyphosate, whatever one it is, which is their big, low-cost, mass-scale, especially vegan farming fertilizer. I believe it's used on soybeans almost exclusively, which is probably part of the reason why it's so estrogenic, which is a true thing as well. The push is all going to come from profit, not from planetary gain, not from the optimal health for X amount of people. And again, the view of doing so is kind of skewed. if you think, what is it, 70, again, I keep saying 75%, but I'm pretty sure this is what I was reading. 75% of the world's land can't be used for agriculture, can't be used for growing crops. It's either the soil's not right, it's too rocky, too mountainous, too wet, whatever the hell it is. But so grass is going to grow on that land. That's the only thing that's going to grow. Humans, we can't metabolize grass. But what can metabolize grass? Cows, sheep, pigs, etc. And what do they metabolize that grass into? Proteins in the form of milk, in the form of meat, which we then eat and get our protein intake from, okay? We can't ever change that land, but we can put it in a better place to grow different types of crops through the basic rules of agriculture. The animals feed off the land and feed back to the land. The nutrients that's in the manure and whatever else goes into the soil and then can eventually create pasture or whatever the hell you call it that you could then grow other things from. So even if we went fully vegan without using any sort of artificial technology, we would still need to use animals in this process anyway. But I don't hear what the alternative option there is, right? So in terms of, well, we can't just force agriculture on land where it's not going to grow anything anyway. So it makes sense that we use the land we've already got. So what's going to happen to where are the animals going to go? I don't think they're going to be used in this process whatsoever. It's certainly not in. I mean, look at the process of soybean agriculture. It's terrible. It's actually terrible for the environment as well. It's a monocrop, which is not good, sustainable farming practice. It requires an intense amount of artificial fertilizer, mainly coming in the form of glyphosate. It's not good for local. Well, it's not good for local nature because, again, the animals aren't going to come and feed off of that either. Soy is estrogenic. Anyone wants to argue that, I can send you all the stuff. It is proven to be estrogenic when it is the predominant protein of your diet. It's
just to go deep down the wormhole of that point.
I'm trying
just
not
because
to get too conspiratorial, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'm probably going to. And again, like, I'm not saying any of this is true. I'm just having a discussion. But like, would there be a benefit of having an estrogenic properties to people's diet? Going vegan is going to bring down levels of testosterone. And if you said that control isn't the most efficient way of getting people to do what you want, right? To inspire them. But you then correct yourself, maybe COVID proved that it was. Fear is also a thing that gets people to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if you can scare people about what's going to happen to the planet and then maybe have more estrogenic sort of crops, things that are going to lower testosterone, again, going into the benefits of the carnivore diet, the vegetables we have today are not the same vegetables. They are sprayed with so many chemicals to stop bugs getting on them and all this sort of stuff, which wreaks havoc on our digestive systems. Like, is there an argument? Is there a claim that there could be something more going on, or potentially people making people more compliant or more unhealthy, or even looking at population control, if that's the thing?
So if that's a wormhole you want to go down, that's a wormhole I believe to be exactly true. And that's what I believe the Great Reset document is. It's to turn the planet or the certain Western civilization into 15-minute cities with social credit score systems, with limited travel, with lab-based foods, with, what would you call them? I forget the name for it, but basically everyone's similar to China. Everyone's just shoved into a skyscraper, into a little box, essentially. That's my worry. That's my genuine worry for the future, because that's what I think's been pushed, and this in the book.
And without anyone, if anyone sits there listening to goes like, these guys are bleeding in the sand, they sound like David Icke. The thing I didn't know about the social credit score until I moved here to Hong Kong, and so you see it, like, people are aware, like, this stuff's being rolled out along the world, and I'm not saying it's going to come to the West, but people are on billboards for bad behavior. They can't leave the country for bad behavior. They can't get a mortgage for bad behavior. And their bad behavior could just be like spoke up against the government, or it could be just not paying their bills on time, or whatever else. Right? You could destroy your whole livelihood for one or two mistakes, committing a crime. And now, I'm not necessarily saying that this is coming across the UK, but we're seeing more and more people now getting cancelled for their beliefs. Have you seen the thing about Gary Lineker at the moment?
I didn't too much because I'm not the biggest fan of Gary Lineker for some of his beliefs, but he spoke out against immigration policy or something.
He spoke out against immigration policy. The government said that is unacceptable behaviour, and now there's talk of him basically being cancelled from things like Match of the Day because he had a difference of opinion from the government. And like, if people don't think this is a social credit score, we saw during the pandemic in Canada, people getting their bank accounts shut down because they didn't want to take a vaccine.
Exactly.
So, like whether you believe that this is my stance on necessarily conspiratorial thinking. Whatever, there are definite truths of people using profit fads, shifts, big economic and cultural moments in history for their own personal greed. Whatever you think the end goal of this is, whether you think this is a new world order, creating a new planetary structure, or whether you just think this is Matt Hancock and Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson going, do you know what, we could probably make some money out of this. It regardless of where it ends, I don't necessarily believe it's going to end in a great reset necessarily, and I don't think there's the Bohemian Grove as all the world leaders conspiring how to make everyone else lives miserable and then have control. But I do think we have people that are in power that are looking for ways to make more money. They're looking for ways to have more influence, and they're looking for ways to make their terms easier so there's less dissenters. And I think it's individual run, but I think people that get to the top tend to share the same traits. And I don't think it's any less worrying. I think the New World Order theory is probably the scariest, but I think putting the wrong person in charge can go down exactly the same route. And I think you're seeing more of this. The food that's brought out now is making people less healthy. The diets that are popularized, and I'm not saying this is a government thing, but some diets hit mainstream and some don't. And what's happened to the obesity levels? They've gone up. And it's now a big, the only thing stopping them in a way, and I swear I think the fitness industry is super important for all its infighting. The talk of calorie deficits, the talk of nutrient density, and the rise, I think, of the carnivore diet is going to come from the groundswell of support from integrity-based doctors. Yes, there's a few charlatans, Liver King being one of them, of the carnivore diet, but there are genuine doctors that are seeing people with autoimmune conditions, seeing people that are affected by plant chemicals, and are finding a solution for all their clients, not necessarily a solution for anybody. More and more people will have these issues the more these things are sprayed. So the more demand there is for things like this. The calorie deficit, while massively flawed by people, the calorie deficit is a thing that works in terms of the obesity, and that's being pushed by a huge shift in people, driven people wanting to better the world in terms of the fitness industry. And that goes against what the media talk about. Case in point, Boris Johnson talking about the reason why he got COVID so bad is because he was obese, right? No talk of vitamin D supplementation. Just go for a jog. No talk of dietary changes. Boris Johnson could have employed any personal trainer in the country to be their spokesperson. But he didn't do it. You think that would be the obvious thing? Get Boris Johnson to pay James Smith to be the voice of the government. Or who was that guy who was getting his gym shut down? He became a cultural figure for a while. Nick something.
Nick Capo,
Get him. Get him. Get someone. But he didn't. Because it was a way to keep people on side. He didn't care about people's health. That was not the point at all.
Yeah.
I went on a rant there, but I hope that makes sense.
It's not a big push about health. If it was about saving the planet and really caring about people's health, why aren't we focusing on the third world countries fixing that first? Why have we got to change the meat production and create 15-minute cities and the social credit scoring system in the biggest cities on the planet? Why is that the first thing that's being rolled in? That doesn't make any sense, which just makes me feel, well, those people are going to get left behind because there's no profit in helping them. It has to be done from an altruistic perspective first. So that's what really, really worries me first, is that why aren't we building up the places that really need it first? Why is the focus coming this direction? And it's recent practices have highlighted how much control the government has. The Canadian truck drivers that should terrify everyone, really. And I don't think enough people even know what happened there. And it's not even conspiracy. These guys were protesting being forced to take the vaccine because they were being forced. They were being threatened with losing their jobs, losing licenses, not being able to work, not being able to travel across state, all sorts of stuff, because they wouldn't take the vaccine for multiple reasons. They were choosing not to. And a large amount of them experienced their bank accounts being shut down. That should terrify you. That for the sole reason of going against what the government wants you to do, whether it was for the right reasons or not, the fact that they could then shut your bank account down as punishment should terrify you to the core. And not enough people are terrified. And if they can do that, then you have to ask, what else can they do? What else can they do? Where else can they go for? Well, realistically, what do you own? You could have your mortgage paid off, and the government can still take your house. You could have crypto wallets, and the government will still get to them. Government will still block you. So it's not really.
When we talked about,
yeah,
we talked about decentralized finance on another episode, right, and the scariness of that. Yeah. But I think, and I know we've gone off the topic of veganism, and I appreciate that some people listen to this and are sitting there going like, right, why are you slamming veganism? Why you think there's an agenda to it? And we're not necessarily saying there is, but, and I'm not saying that I think any of these things or I believe any of these things, but what I want in this wonderful art that is podcasting is for people to have a discussion and to just whatever the agenda is, altruistic or not, open your eyes to the things that are not. I'll give you a few more examples. For anyone who sits and thinks that the governments always have our best interests at heart, remember the Americans gave thousands of Africans syphilis and killed tons of them for experimentation.
Yeah.
Remember that like MDMA, hallucinogenics, they were made class A, like mushrooms and LSD. They were made class A drugs, not because they were dangerous, not because the definition of a class A drug is it has no medicinal value. Yeah. Now, we now know that's not true at all in terms of these drugs. PTSD, depression, anxiety, OCD, all these things had a lot of research backing the benefits of some of these hallucinogenic drugs. They have medicinal value, but they were hidden for years and banned because people didn't want anyone dissenting in the Cold War. In the Cold War, in the hippie phase, people were taking LSD and going, I'm not so sure about this Vietnam War, rightly so. And they stopped that happening. So what we're saying is that if you're vegan for an ethical reason, all power to you. If you're vegan because you don't like meat, fine. If you're vegan because you want to be healthy and no one is going to sway you, awesome. If you want help, I'm happy to help you. But for people that are there thinking this is the next healthy trend, just look a little deeper. Do your research and just for yourself find out what's going on. Because I don't think we'll ever know. But at least I think when I come to a conclusion of this, and I may change my mind, I'm happy to do so. But wherever I go, whether I double down on the meat stuff, whether I go into maybe if I become a vegan, I'm doing it with my eyes open, not doing it because that is what I'm being told.
To sum it, I'm not saying we end the podcast here, but to sum up my thought on the question, is there a vegan agenda? Yes, of course there is, I believe, because there's profit to be made. So I think the big push of seeing vegan options everywhere is not to support the people that are making that choice to go vegan. It's to create more profit. and it's to create more profit with probably something that's cheaper to manufacture. So in that case, there is an agenda. I don't believe any of these companies are driving vegan options for your health than they are. Can you really tell me that the vegan option at McDonald's is healthier than the actual burgers? Probably not. I don't know what it's made out of. I don't know what it's cooked out of. They're probably not going to release that information. So what's the vegan option there? Which just means not using beef, and beef is a dubious term in their actual burgers anyway, no? So I think there is an actual agenda there. Could we then go down a more conspiratorial rabbit hole of some sort of great reset? I believe there's merit to looking and discussing it and making sure that you don't just blindly go yes to everything a government or a world leader or anyone from some economic forum that you have not voted into power. I don't believe you should just give them free reign over your choice. You should be more sovereign. And it's also worth noting, just on a quick side note of banning things that are Class A that have no medicinal value, cocaine's used in nose surgery still. It was used in nose surgery before, it's still used in nose surgery now. But it's a Class A fucking drug. There's all these different things they want to put some sort of control on. Because, yes, if the entire society was on drugs, we might see pure chaos in the streets in some respect. That would be the big worry, right? But then look at Denver. I use Denver as a prime example. Look at Colorado, which was, I believe, the first American state to legalize marijuana, and is probably going to be the first American state to legalize mushrooms for therapeutic use only. It's not going to be available on the streets, but eventually it could be made available on the street. In the state of Colorado, crime is going down, health is going up. There's been a fantastic amount of money, same in California as well. I believe California's tax revenue from the marijuana industry was up in the multiple millions now, if not even the billions, if not just touching the billions. That's huge. What can that money go towards doing? That's going to help a fuck ton of people out, isn't it? Depending what it's being used for. So you always have to look at yourself as the individual first. What's the best thing for you? And that shouldn't come from someone else's mandate, really.
Yes. It shouldn't come from a mandate, and it shouldn't come from one source. And that includes yourself. So like you find another opinion, find multiple other opinions, listen to people, and listen to people on more than a soundbite. Like go and listen to them speak for 30, 40 minutes. And, I think it's interesting you talk about the marijuana and what the benefits of it. We're going the opposite way here. Marijuana now, even CBD oil now will get you 15 years in prison, more than as much as heroin and meth for CBD oil. Imagine that. Yeah. Imagine someone getting 7-8 years for domestic abuse and you're in there for face cream. But I decided, because we're not yet Rogan level, and I have to be Jamie and Joe. I've got up. So, do you know how many calories? Let's test your PT knowledge. Do you know roughly how many calories are in a McDonald's Big Mac?
In a Big Mac, I'm going to say, I'm going to go with 656.
Oh, you might go and get one now, because it's 563.
I've overshot, haven't I?
You've overshot 563. Can you guess how much is in the vegan equivalent, the double McPlant?
Ooh, right. Let's go 768.
They're similar, but it's 590. So it is more calories. Yeah. So like 32 grams of fat, 11 grams of sugar, 2.8 grams of salt, and 31 grams of protein. Where if you take that's the vegan. And if you get into the Big Mac, which is 550 calories, so 40 calories more, we have 30 grams of fat, so less fat in the Big Mac, 45 grams of carbs compared to the 43 in the vegan, 25 grams. We actually have more protein, funnily enough, in the vegan one. But but the fact the calories is in the vegan one is more in the equivalent straight swap shows where this health thing is skewed, right?
I'm going to assume that the vegan burger is beyond meat, rather than it being a an actual plant. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But the fact that it's more fat than the actual Big Mac.
Yeah, beyond.
It's beyond burger, yeah. So what is that? Lab-based meat from, what was it? Pea protein. So I think that's why it's probably more protein, because it's pea protein, right? Jesus Christ! It should have peas. Come on, why have we got more fat in the vegan Big Mac than the actual Big Mac when it's allegedly made out of pea protein? That doesn't add up. Which means they've probably cooked it in a ton of maybe palm oil. Palm oil's vegan. Maybe palm oil, maybe coconut oil. They've just cooked it in a ton of fat to make it taste half decent. Potentially, I'm going to argue whether that is actually the case or not. Yeah.
So, to sort of close this out on one other topic going into veganism, what do you think of the vegan protests, and why are they so heavily featured on like media?
Because again,
we had the gone.
The ones you see people walking into supermarkets and pouring the milk out on the floor and just, putting crucifixes on the meat and holding funerals for a packet of mints and stuff like that. Which most of this stuff, let's face it, is criminal vandalism. Let's face it, there's ways to make your point without destroying the livelihood of the person who just owns the shop or the franchise, and the people that need to eat as well. Let's not forget those. Why does it get pushed in the media so much? Same as Extinction Rebellion stuff. If you trace back to who is actually funding these organizations, they will probably also be a shareholder or a stakeholder in some sort of media company. And the money will always go. There's always money. There's always money. I don't believe there's any mass scale organization, protesters, whatever the hell it is, activists, where there isn't some sort of profit being driven backwards. Local activism, yeah, probably not. But this isn't local activism. This is large scale, national, if not global activism. and someone has to fund it. Someone has to fund it. I don't believe you're really doing it for the good of the planet. So you've always got to, without getting too deep into the matrix, you've always got to look at where's the money coming from? Where's the funding coming from? Then you've got to question that, because that kind of dictates the message behind whoever's saying it further down the line. It might seem, the media might make it seem like these are just ordinary people, ordinary jobs, jumping up and doing what's right, but they're not. There's organisation to it. It's not grassroots activism anymore. When it's funded, it's not grassroots. Of course it's not. And it's certainly not local. I think the better thing to do would be to create educational bodies that go and teach people sustainable, ethical farming practices, which include the use of livestock and cattle, and how to potentially create a healthy vegan diet, as we've already discussed. But they're not. They're just making noise, trashing the place, and going, you need to go vegan. And that's it. So definitely don't listen to those people, because I'd question if all of them are vegan anyway. I'm sure there's a few drunken Big Macs eaten on a Friday night, which is most vegans I know, which is nothing wrong with that, not judging them. So I think that
it comes back to the start, right? It goes back to the start, right? We said that we said that, like, with the carnivore diet, you don't have to be perfect. If someone says a vegan, you don't have to be. If you became a majority vegan diet because you maybe know something we don't, maybe you've looked into more research, and you think it is better for the environment, you don't have to be completely vegan to do that.
No.
And like I think if there's anything as a point to this to close off on, it's like, this is our thoughts. This is our having a conversation and looking into the other side of this and having a discussion. I don't know everything about this. And if you sit in there and you go, these guys are wrong, they don't know what they're talking about, or you're offended by this or whatever, if you've got a good counter argument, come on the show. Come on the show. And I'm happy to be proven wrong. I did an episode with Ryan Anderson talking about his vegan diet. It was super pro-vegan because it was like he's been a vegan. I haven't been, and I want to know how he did it, how he gets other people in shape.
Sure.
And so, like, I think I want this is an episode. It's definitely worth saying. When my mindset is never set in stone. My mindset is exploring, and this is how I found the research I have, and I'm all for counter arguments.
Yeah, always up for that. If anyone does listen to this, and regardless of any episode we've ever spoke about, and we've spoke about some crazy stuff, we've spoke about aliens, we've spoken about COVID, we've gone deep down some mad fucking rabbit holes, right? If anyone ever wants to, rather than just keeping it to yourself and going, God's conspiracy fucking nuts. No. More than happily have you on. And you know what we'll do? We'll listen. It won't be like an episode of Rogan where everyone's talking over each other and shouting and getting angry. Sit back and we'll listen. Keep it calm, because 3 people on a podcast is fucking chaos. So it'd have to be like a round table for them. There you go. Talk, listen, dig deeper. You said it yourself. You have to form your opinion from more than one source. You have to look. You have to do the research. You have to figure out how that applies to your life, what's best for you, and is that research done properly? You said it perfectly with the evidence-based. Any personal trainer out there, and there's tons of them on Instagram, can call themselves evidence-based personal trainers just because they've learned how to use PubMed.com. That doesn't mean that they're bringing you the right research. It doesn't mean that they're interpreting the research the right way either. It's so easy to go on PubMed, grab one article, and just take a soundbite out of the article, because some of those articles are fucking deep. It's why I don't go on it. Some of it goes straight over my head. But it's so easy to see that juicy little soundbite going, well, intermittent fasters, if they broke their fast at 145 instead of 130, they saw a 0.03% increased metabolic rate, and then you can do your whole
and then someone will say, yeah, exactly. Then that person literally just then says, metabolic rate increased by this. It's like V-Shred where he talks about capsicum in that video for like 40 minutes about increases in metabolism, Harvard's secret that they don't want you to know, this sort of stuff, and maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do the V-Shred thing and get the proper Rogan mic and the red backdrop. But yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I think what I love about podcasting is that it's us having an open discussion about where we are, and our views may develop as the show goes on. And I think there's too much anger in the world where people are like, I don't like that, I disagree. Cool, prove us wrong in a good way. And I am more than happy to listen rather than getting angry about our views. Understand they are just views, and I welcome hearing other sides of this, and I think more people should.
Mate, it's more difficult to watch them now. I used to watch a lot of Alex Jones interviews because I saw a lot of Alex Jones documentaries, and you might turn off as soon as you hear that name, but there are a fair amount of things Alex Jones has said that's proven to be correct as well. But I would also watch him getting grilled and rinsed by people at the same time. I listen to Rogan's guests where I agree with what they're saying. I listen to Rogan's guests where I disagree with what they're saying. Same with Modern Wisdom, same with a ton of other podcasts as well. I listen to, I forget the name, I will find it if anyone's interested. A great podcast recently where they were talking about semaglutide, Ozempic, and it was a giant round table of maybe about 6 people from both sides of the equation. And it never got to the end point where they say, this is what you should believe. It was just a great discussion. That was one of the greatest fucking podcasts I've ever listened to in my life, just on how it was done, how much time they gave to each person, how no one got angry. They didn't start shit slinging or name calling or anything like that. And that's how we move forward. You listen to that, you've got both sides of the equation, experts from both sides of the spectrum. You should be able to form a decent enough opinion from that without just choosing your favorite expert and going, I'm just going to listen to what they say and whatever. But that's where the real growth comes from, that discussion and points of view being challenged. And that's what we've kind of done today. We want to challenge this big push that veganism is the healthier diet to go and it's the one that's going to save the planet. Well, let's challenge that. But it also doesn't mean we're 100% correct in everything that we've said. When we would both stand up and go, okay, if we discover we're wrong, hell yeah, call us out on it, because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to promote false beliefs thinking I'm right and going, this is true, because you're just walking around in delusion land.
I also think if there is a tinfoil hat side of this, and there is something that's a bigger thing, as a matrix view on this, I want to be wrong, not right. I actively want to be wrong, because that's not a nice reality, right?
Oh my
Yeah.
God, hell yeah.
So just to call it there, I think this I think we're going into too many other topics now. But for people who want to hear about the health side of what you do and the fat loss fast lane, because that's where you're going to be talking red meat and things like that, and veganism diets, give yourself a plug.
So you can find me on Fat Loss Fast Lane on any of the social media platforms, where, just you saying that as well, somewhere deep in my Google Drive, I've got a half-written document called the Vegan Fat Loss Fast Lane, where I was going to do a fat loss book specifically for vegans. So I'm not against trying to help people. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you're a vegan or want to become a vegan. So yeah, you can find me on Fat Loss Fast Lane on all the social media platforms. That's where I'm going to talk about meat, men, and well, I've got a couple of ideas over the next couple of weeks of the. You might have seen on some of my platforms, I've changed my name to the Fat Loss and Libido Guy. We're going to go hard down that route. Because I realised
fantastic. So looking forward to that. For anyone else who wants, go on.
No, I was just saying, I spoke about it a lot last year, and then I kind of went back a bit. Now we're going in hard. Pun intended.
Double down, absolutely double down. So like, yeah, and for anyone who wants to follow this, obviously you if you're listening to this, you're probably either on YouTube, Simon Kingsley Dutton on YouTube, or Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast from. I'm at Kingsley Dutton, and for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more into being evidence informed rather than evidence based, we have our HIT Level 1 course available now. Link is in my bio. And we also have soon, within the next 2-3 months, the next intake of the Coaching Confidence course, where we go through all these different types of diets, talk about how to cycle your diet over the course of the year, pros and cons of carnivore, high carb, low carb, and all of the above. So if that interests you, drop me a message. We can talk about how we can help your coaching business, and we'll go from there. But Rob, pleasure as always, man. Catch you soon.
Peace.